Hi everyone, Leah here from EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another fun beading video for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to go check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll always know when we're posting new content. Okay, so today's project is going to utilize the newest collection from Eureka Crystal Beads, the Supernova collection, and it's currently up for sale on EurekaCrystalBeads.com, and it is the December 2020 collection. It features a beautiful array of metallics mixed with vibrant, rich, just galactic colors and finishes, and it's just beautiful to work with. And you're going to have a lot of options for different colors that you can pull out of it. And so these are the colors that I've chosen to work with for today's project. So I'm picking these sort of rich golds into the topazes, this absolutely beautiful fire polish here that has these kind of greens and blues and purples to some tinier fire polish, and the size 11 seed beads that come in the mix. Now, in this collection, you have seed beads ranging from 15s to 11s to 8s to 6s, and they're all a slightly different palette that works within this collection. But it's the 11s that I wanted to work to pick up on these beautiful colors. Now, let me go over everything a little more closely, and I will start by telling you that the two items that are not included in this collection are right here, and those are simply some gold crimps there, some 2mm crimps and gold crimp covers. Now, the collection has a mix of metallics, but it does feature some rose gold findings, but I really wanted to pick up and feature these absolutely stunning gold colored size 13 Czech Charlotte seed beads. And what's nice about them is that they're such a soft gold that you can absolutely transition it to working with more gold or working it towards the rose gold side of things. So you're going to have options within this collection, which is one of the things I really like about its versatility. So I did decide to play up the gold Charlottes a little bit by switching my findings over to the gold colored ones. So again, these are the only two things that aren't in the collection that I'm showing you here, aside from the tools and also the soft flex. But as far as the beads go, that's what we got. So again, let's go back to these. We have these beautiful size 13 Czech Charlottes, and a Charlotte is a seed bead that has one single facet on it. And as I move them, you're probably going to see some of those facets glistening a little bit there. And pro tip here, leave them on the string if you can, because they're going to be easier to work with. And I'll show you what I mean shortly. Next, we have some fire polish here. We have a 6mm fire polish, a 4mm fire polish, and a 2mm fire polish. I have this beautiful little mix of size 11 seed beads. And then as far as everything else, I'm going to be using my crimper tool. This is a standard size crimper tool for a 2mm crimp. And I have my flex wire cutters. These are the types of cutters that you want to reserve for cutting flexible beading wire like soft flex. So speaking of soft flex, I'm going to be using the 014 fine diameter soft flex. You could also use the 014 fine diameter soft touch by soft flex. Either one is fine for this particular project. And before I get started, I want to show you one more quick example of the beads in this collection that you could use for the same exact project if you wanted to just change up the color theme a bit. So right over here, I'm going to pull out some of the other fire polish to show you. So again, I have some fire polish and some seed beads here, but the collection also comes with this fire polish and these seed beads. So now let's throw these down in there in this mix here, and you can see how we can make the same project from the same collection, but with a totally different look color-wise. So this is a great collection for getting versatility out of it. All right, so let me dump out a little bit of everything I'm going to be using and talk to you more about our project. Okay, I've dumped out a little bit of my seed beads here. I have a loose strand of Charlottes ready to go. I've dumped out a little bit of my fire polish. And by the way, before I keep going, can I just show you up close how absolutely stunning this fire polish is? This is probably my favorite item in the entire collection. I'm fascinated by it. Just had to show that there. Okay, now the findings we have here, the crimp and the crimp cover. We're going to use 2 of them pretty soon, and the other 2 we're going to use later on. So the style of necklace we're making is a lariat style necklace, but most lariats that you think of are one long strand similar to, say, a scarf, and you can tie it around your neck in multiple ways depending on how long that strand is or how long your scarf is. Well, there's another style of lariat which contains a loop at one end and then a long necklace, and you thread that necklace through the loop. And if you think about scarves, sometimes a style that you can wear with a scarf is when you double a scarf and then you wrap it around your neck and then the 2 ends feed through the loop. This is the same concept. So it's just another way that you can wear a lariat necklace. You're going to have the option to make this as long as you want. Now, there won't be a too long. There will be a too short, however. The minimum length you need is going to vary neck to neck, but you do need to have it long enough that the end of your soft flex, of your beaded soft flex, can file through that loop and dangle past it long enough where it stays on and it doesn't just come off. So you can't just make it, the length of maybe an inch dangling past that loop. You want it to drape down a bit longer so the weight of the necklace keeps it through that loop and keeps it on. But what's nice about this is you can figure out that ideal length as you go. This is not something you have to predetermine from the start. And we're going to be starting with the end opposite the loop. We're going to be starting with our dangle end here. So the beads that I'm going to be using, like I said, are from the Supernova collection, and I'm going to feature at the bottom of my lariat the 6mm topaz colored fire polish. Now we're going to plan out what this first little dangle is going to look like. And I know I'm going to have my little fire polish at the bottom. And I know I'm going to need a seed bead underneath it. And again, I'm using my colors here from this mix. I'm probably going to use some of the blue to pick up on the bluish tones in that fire polish, but I'm probably going to be sticking a bit more heavy on the pinkish side. So another thing you hopefully get from this video is maybe a new or an added sense of comfort with design, which is something that people find pretty tricky. Part of this is getting a little bit designed on the fly. So I know the exact design I'm making technically, but I'm going to play with it as I go to decide how I want to lay out my beads. And you're going to have the same option to completely change the layout of your beads while still doing the same technique that I'm showing you. So we're going to start with our fire polish here. Now, because this is going to be at the very end of the lariat, I need a little bead at the bottom that is going to act as a little stopper bead. And I think I'm going to use one of these little pink seed beads here. I'm just going to pick this right up from the tray to make it easier. And I think I'm going to put one of these little beauties right above it. Now, right above this here is going to be a crimp bead. And it's very important that the beads that will be in between the crimp bead and the little stopper bead, so these 2 beads right here, have holes that are big enough that 2 lines of soft flex can be going through them. So we're going to start with our soft flex here. And notice I haven't even cut it off my spool yet. I don't even have to do that yet, which is nice. So I'm going to start by stringing my crimp bead. I'm going to string my little 4mm fire polish, my 6mm fire polish, and then what's going to be my little stopper bead at the bottom. And I'm going to take my end and I'm going to double it back through the fire polish beads, the 6 and the 4mm. Oops, there's the 6. It's going to want to be a little bit springy. That's okay. 6, let me get this back through the 4 and then through that crimp bead. So it's coming out from the crimp bead as well. And again, don't worry if it stays springy. I'm just gonna make sure that I'm holding the 2 ends here so it doesn't all pop out again. But once I crimp it, which is what I'm doing now, everything will stay in place. So if you need to see in more detail how you utilize a crimper tool, we do have videos on our channel that you can check out that will go over it much more step by step. So I'm gonna go a little bit faster here, assuming that you do know the basic technique of crimping. I'm going to get that into that little back chamber there. And now that I have the crimp, I'm holding it enough to keep hold of it, but I'm not squishing it yet. So I'm still able to move it. And it's at this point that I'm going to push it up like this and give it that squish. Because now notice, we don't have that movement anymore. So now that I have my little kidney bean shape, I'm going to put it up on its side, put it in the front chamber, and fold it closed. Now, we are going to end up putting a crimp cover over this. It's up to you whether you want to do it now or later. But now is the point where we do have to cut from our spool. So you want to have a sense of how long you're going to want your necklace to be, whether it's long or whether it's ultra long. I would always recommend cut off more than you think you need. And when I say more, cut off a lot more. And another little pro tip for you is that in this kind of an instance, if you think that you might want, say, a 24-inch necklace, so you cut off about maybe 26 or 27 pieces of soft flex. It might get to the point where, you have some soft flex left over that you had to snip off that you didn't need, but it was so short that you can't really do anything with it now. Well, if you cut a much longer piece than you need, whatever you have left that you didn't end up using will likely be long enough that you could use it for another project like a bracelet. So overestimate in this point here. And a really great way that you can get a basic idea is actually put the soft flex up around your neck. So that's actually what I'm doing right here that you can't see off camera. And I just want to make sure, I want to pull this part here, the little dangle we made, down my chest, and I want it to sit where I would want that length, that final end to be. So nice and long. I'm going to about just below my breastbone or so. And then I'm going to pull my soft flex down to the same length, but then go further because we're going to have to do that beaded loop on the other side. So we need enough soft flex for that beaded loop. And then you can see how this is going to go right through it. And we're going to have this great lariat style that's going to just sit so beautifully around our neck. So you need to make sure that you have enough for this to go through longer than just something like this. You want it to really go through this much longer, about more like this. So definitely overestimate, like I said. So let me give this a nice little snip here. If you don't have a pair of flex wire cutters, you should strongly consider that if you love stringing, because you will destroy scissors cutting soft flex with it because the inside core is stainless steel. But your soft flex cutters are going to give you a beautiful clean cut every time, provided that you leave them for only your soft flex. Don't go cutting any head pins with it. So treat your tools right. They will last a lifetime. All right, so this is what we have. We now have our soft flex cut. We've now figured out the best way to guesstimate how long we want it. Now, another little pro tip is I never like to cut my soft flex here right down at the crimp bead. We want to leave a little bit of a tail, and the reason is that if for some reason your crimp cover ever slips, your crimp bead, if your crimp bead ever slips and that tail was cut right at the crimp bead, it's going to pop right out. But if you've left yourself a little bit of an edge, you're going to see it start to loosen up a little bit, and you can maybe catch it before it comes out. So I'm going to snip it, but I'm going to leave a little smidgen on there, and we will just make sure that the next couple of beads that we put on, we can fit right over that tail. So we're going to have to pick a bead or two that can also have two bits of soft flex going through it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, let's see if that 2mm fire polish can fit through. I'll be honest, I'm not super sure yet. We'll give it a shot, and boom, we're good. So we have a nice little tapered look here. We were able to get that little fire polish to sit right above it. We'll see if we can get maybe a little seed bead there. Go with the blue one. It looks like the hole might be big enough. There we go. So now we have filtered some beads right over that. We are going to do the crimp cover now, only because with how tight this necklace could get, I want to make sure that it's not so tight in here that I have to really force that crimp cover in there, and then I might be forcing it so hard with the pliers that I could damage these beads. So now that we know that these are going to work, we're just going to slide them away from that area. We're going to go to our crimp cover. We're going to just, we're going to drop it. We're going to feed it right over our crimp bead. It looks like if you've never worked with a crimp cover before, it's a great way to camouflage a crimp bead, which is especially helpful if you end up sort of mashing a crimp bead, but you know it's going to hold really well, but it just doesn't look pretty. This is a great little trick to make sure you have some crimp covers lying around. But it just looks like a little metal round bead, but it's just got a slice in it, and then it's peeled open a little bit. My favorite way to close a crimp cover is to use my crimper tool, and it's to use that very front chamber that just looks like a little little oval. I just find it cradles the crimp cover pretty nicely from the sides, and you can close it really nicely. And then what I usually do is then turn the crimp cover so the opening is on the ceiling of the pliers, and that usually nudges that little bit that's left open beautifully closed. So now we can go ahead and file these beads right over. All right, we're gonna keep going. Okay, so I've gone ahead and strung up some of my beads here. And so you can see what I've done beyond the 2 beads that were covering the wire here was a little sequence like this. So I just did a little mix of some of those 13 Charlottes. You can see right here, I have sort of a symmetrical pattern. So I did Charlotte, seed bead, Charlotte, seed bead, Charlotte, and that's here on both sides. So I started with that and I ended with that. And then I did this little sequence here, which has a 2mm fire polish, seed bead, 4mm fire polish, then seed bead. And again, you can see I repeated it on the other side of the very center, which has some seed beads and that 6mm fire polish. So if you want to get a good little look at that, this is a good time to kind of pause the video and you can get a look at what I did there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a lot more of my larger beads towards the front of the necklace. And then as I get more and more towards the back, I'm going to be using more seed beads and especially more of those beautiful Charlottes. And I'm going to show you a trick. Whenever you buy a type of seed bead, and you'll mainly see this with Czech seed beads, but whenever you buy a seed bead and it happens to come on strings, so this is called a hank. When they come like this, it's on a hank. And when you get that, you're going to want to keep them on the string if you can, because what you can do is I can carefully pull off an entire section, and that section is now within my fingers, and I can carefully run my my soft flex up through it, and then look at that. With the exception of that last one at the end, I got a bunch of them on at once. So it's a cool little trick for getting a whole bunch of them on at once. And I think that's just a really pretty way to start to brighten this up. And again, that little sparkle on the Charlottes, you can definitely see it there. That single facet that's the signature look of a Charlotte, is that single facet. So I'm going to get a little bit more of this strung up, and when I come back, I'm going to explain to you my design techniques for what I did, and we'll keep beading as we work our way to that other side and that loop at the end. Okay, I wanted to show you where I was at design-wise. So this is what you had seen so far. And one of the things I want you to notice that I did is I took a section of those Charlottes, and when I went to repeat it, I made it longer. And then this section is even longer. This is a really nice way to add a graduated look to a design. Another thing I did was, after I had a couple repeating bits here, I then did a larger version of it here. Again, this is just to add interest. You know, it's very easy for us to get caught up in a very A, B repeating pattern, while what you can do is come up with a nice little accent here, a nice little sequence here, and then use it again, but embellish it a little bit more, add a little bit more to it, and repeat more of those beads, and it elongates it a little bit. And it adds more interest to a necklace while still remaining cohesive with the other little sequence down here. So I went back to that same simpler sequence after I did an even longer section of the Charlottes. So again, if you kind of like wrap it up so you can see it on the screen, this is what we have so far. And I think it's going to really lead around the neck beautifully with the increasing sections of the Charlottes here. That's going to draw the eye up really nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up my beaded portion here. I will give you a nice close-up of what this larger section is here. Again, I mixed some Charlottes and seed beads here, some of my darker fire polish and darker seed beads. I went back to that topaz and that matte sort of red color, which I really like. I thought the topaz with that red is a really nice, has a really nice pop to it. And then went back to the darker blues and then back to that same thing. So starting from here, it's symmetrical from both sides. So that's all that I did there. But I encourage you to play with it. You're going to have a lot of fun playing with this design with the different beads in the collection while still, like I said, doing the same technical steps. So I'm going to keep going and I'm going to get the rest of this designed out, and I will see you back here in a minute to do that loop and finish it up. Okay, so let's go over what we've strung so far here. So as a review, this was the beginning, and then I developed a little sequence that I knew I would repeat, or at least I did a larger sequence here. And again, I started to lengthen that spacing with the Charlottes more and more. I then went back and did that same simple version of that sequence again. And as I got towards the back, as you can see, I have my longest section of my Charlottes, and I did a little bit of a simpler version right at the back. So where we are now is that after that center part, I just had to mirror what was on the other side, which is what I started to do there. But once I got back down to that first larger segment that we did, I did that larger segment. But then right after it, instead of where I would have tapered down to then go down into more Charlottes, I strung a crimp bead. And then I strung beads for a beaded loop. So that's where we are now. Because about where I want this to fall is that in the same area is where the necklace is going to sit nicely. So these two sections will sit close together. Now that may not always be the case. This will pull longer and shorter sort of a little bit as you wear it. But I wanted these two at least to be in the same vicinity of each other around that loop. So it just starts to pull that color in nicely together. So easiest part is finishing. We have our beaded loop. I'm going to go back to that crimp bead right there. And we're going to feed our wire back up through it and back up through that fire polish. And we're going to pull it all nice and tight. And one of the things that I do want to point out that I did is when I strung the beads for the loop, I started teeny and I ended teeny. I didn't just start by putting a fire polish right there. And the reason is that they will gather down more neatly right next to the crimp. And you want to make sure that your whole necklace is pulled tight. It doesn't have any slack. And this is most easily done by making sure that you're pulling in the direction towards the necklace. You never want to pull away like that. That won't really help you get your necklace nice and snug. So now we're going to go back to our crimper tool. And I'm going to be careful when I put my crimp bead into my crimper tool, and just make sure to double check that your seed beads aren't inside that crimper tool either. We don't want to smash them. Give it a squish. Do part 2 of our squish. Fabulous. Trim off that little tail there. And now we're going to get that last crimp cover onto here. My crimper tool. You can see that when I went to squish it, that seam is still a little bit open. So that is why I then like to go ahead and put that seam on the roof of the crimper tool, and it nudges it shut that last little bit. Nice little seam there, nice and closed. So what we have here, as you can see, is a necklace that is going to go around your neck, and then you're going to have this beautiful closure down in the front. And this is another great necklace if you don't have a toggle clasp or a lobster claw or a clasp of any kind lying around. You can make your own little beaded loop closure for this. And this is going to drape down beautifully with any sort of lovely blouse, vertical lines, a blazer. This would be gorgeous over a turtleneck if you want to wear something over a turtleneck or something warmer during the winter, because you're going to have so much flexibility with the amount around your neck. So it's going to fit really nicely over bulkier necklines as well. Or like I said, in addition to just being a very sleek, sexy look as it goes downward. Again, you can have a lot of fun with the design here, and it's really also not an expensive necklace to make. So if you're a crafter and you like to do your craft shows, your vendor fairs, you like to sell your jewelry, this is a great design on hand, because outside of this beautiful Supernova collection, which is giving you gorgeous colors to work with, you can also make this necklace with kind of what stuff you have lying around. It's a great bead soup necklace, and you can have a lot of fun changing up these little sections and what's in them, and you could get a million different looks with this same technique. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to head on over to EurekaCrystalBeads.com to check out that Supernova collection. Hopefully we can help you out with any of your beading and jewelry needs. And we will see you next time. Bye.